Hi everyone, it's Matt, and I'm the youth and family pastor at Cornerstone Church in Marshfield. I'm here today with your Cornerstone Connection, a daily devotional. I want to start with a question this morning, and it is this: how do you want to be remembered? What do you want your legacy to be? If you were to go down to a company that makes headstones, gravestones for when people are buried, and they were to say to you, okay, when you die, what do you want written on your headstone? What do you want written on your gravestone? What would you want people to say? Jim, Susie, I remember this about her. When I think about him, this is what I think of. What would you want written on your headstone or your gravestone? How do you want to be remembered? Now, I start with that question because of what we find and what we read in Exodus chapter 38 today, okay? And really, I'm going to jump around in chapter 38 and then hone in on one particular verse that I believe will tie back into the question I started off with, okay? So in Exodus chapter 38, the people of Israel are continuing their work and their labor to build the tabernacle of God. And I just want to say, one of the, when you read these sections of text in which there's constructing and building, and it's all these measurements and dimensions, and you read it and you're like, man, this is kind of boring, and what's the point of this, and what am I supposed to get out of this? Can I just say, one of the big things that I take away from these chapters of the Bible, when it gets a little bit laborsome, if you will, is it's a reminder to me that we serve a God of order. We serve a God of design. We serve a God who has a plan. We serve a God who has a purpose. We serve a God who didn't just, nothing was a mistake. But he had a plan, he had a desire, he had a blueprint, if you will, for things in this world. Now, we've done a lot to mess that up and break it, but in the finite details of things, when we search Scripture, we can see these characteristics of God rise to the surface in sections of text like that. So, just want to say that, but let's go to chapter 38 of Exodus. In chapter 38, verse 1, it starts with this. It says, okay, think about that. He made the altar of burnt offering of acacia wood. 5 cubits was its length, 5 cubits its breadth. It was square, and 3 cubits was its height. Okay, we're going to jump down to verse 8. It says, he, again, made the basin of bronze and its stand of bronze from the mirrors of the ministering women who ministered in the entrance of the tent of meeting. Okay, jump down to verse 9. And he made the court for the south side. The hangings of the court were of fine twined linen, 100 cubits, and it goes on and on about the dimensions. Okay, and so then we get down to verse 21, and it says this. Okay, we've highlighted this he a few times. Now, if I were to ask you, do you know who that he is? And we're in the book of Exodus, maybe most of you would guess a couple of names. You'd go, is it Moses or is it Aaron? Okay, these are kind of the two famous Israelite people of the time that we hear about a lot in the book of Exodus. But the answer to that question is neither of those two guys. Let's go to verse 21. It says, these are the records of the tabernacle of the testimony, as they were recorded at the commandment of Moses. So Moses was commanding this, the responsibility of Levites under the direction of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. And here we go. We're going to get our identity of this he. Verse 22. Bezalel, the son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made all that the Lord commanded Moses. And with him was Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and designer, an embroiderer in blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen. Now, it's not the most gripping text, is it? But I got to tell you, when I read verse 22 about Bezalel, and that he made all that the Lord commanded Moses, and with him Aholiab did the same thing, and everybody under their direction, it got me thinking, there's a lot of things I could come up with to put on my gravestone. There's a lot of things I could come up with to put on my headstone for people to go, oh, when I think of Matt, this is the kind of life he lived. This is the kind of person he was. But when I read about Bezalel, is there really anything better than just people remembering that this man, this woman, they were obedient to God? They did what God commanded them to do. And you see, the story of Bezalel and Aholiab goes back to chapter 35, towards the end of 35, where God pours out his Spirit on them to give them the gifts and the skill to do exactly what he needed them to do. Now, he gifted them, but at the same time, they also had to obey. They still had to receive the commands through Moses from God, okay? And they still had to obey those commands. And they did. And here, tucked in verse 22, is their life legacy. That they made all that the Lord commanded them. They were obedient to God. Friends, how do you want to be remembered? And as I read it in chapter 38 of Exodus, I'm more and more convinced that I want to be remembered as someone who is obedient to God. At the end of the day, that's how I want to be remembered. Because what we find out in 1 John chapter 5, verse 3, is that when we obey God, what that does to God is it communicates love to him. And of course, I want to love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then secondly, love my neighbor as myself. So consider that for yourselves today, friends. And may you take it and apply it as God sees fit. Have a great day. We'll see you next time on the Cornerstone Connection.